Imagine a quiet piece of land everyone ignored for decades, until one woman revealed it held more power than anyone could have guessed. The story begins with Evelyn Carter, a soft-spoken woman in her mid-40s who inherited a stretch of land just outside her small town. To most people, it was nothing more than a forgotten patch of soil, uneven ground, scattered oaks, and a small creek that only trickled in spring. But to Evelyn, it was her family's legacy. Generations of Carters had lived on and cared for this land, and though outsiders dismissed it as worthless, she knew its real value went far beyond appearances. When the Homeowners Association arrived, things shifted. Developers working with the HOA had been eyeing Evelyn's property for months. Their glossy brochures promised 96 new modern homes in a gated community that would revitalize the area. But what they didn't show was that every one of those homes was planned directly on the Carter land. Evelyn wasn't naive. She knew the HOA believed she was too quiet, too unassuming, and too powerless to stand in their way. They mistook her silence for weakness. What they didn't know was that Evelyn had been preparing for this moment for years. Behind her calm smile was a carefully constructed plan. Long before the HOA's construction trucks ever rolled in, she had taken steps, legal steps that nobody in town thought she was capable of. She had quietly updated the deed, filed protective clauses with the county office, and placed restrictions that tied ownership rights into knots too complicated for any developer to unravel. Yet the HOA moved forward. Day after day, heavy machines tore into the soil, leveling trees and carving roads. Neighbors whispered, wondering if Evelyn would fight back or finally surrender. She remained silent, watching from her porch as the outlines of brand-new homes rose against the skyline. What the HOA didn't realize was that with every brick they laid, with every nail they hammered, they were walking deeper into Evelyn's carefully designed trap. She had let them build. She had let them spend millions, and she had quietly let their overconfidence grow unchecked. But just when the final house was being painted, Evelyn stood at the edge of the development with a thin folder in her hand. It was time to reveal what she had been waiting for. The HOA thought they had won. Evelyn knew the game had only just begun. The sun dipped low over the newly built neighborhood, casting golden light across the fresh pavement and identical rooftops. The HOA board members gathered at their newly finished clubhouse, congratulating themselves for completing the project ahead of schedule. 96 homes stood tall, ready for families, ready for profits. To them, it was a victory. But across the road, Evelyn Carter watched in silence. Her neighbors had started to whisper about her again. Why had she allowed them to build? Why hadn't she gone to court, protested, or blocked the construction? People assumed she was too tired to fight. Some pitied her, others judged her. Evelyn never responded. Her silence, however, was not surrender. Every afternoon, Evelyn sat on her porch with her worn notebook, jotting down observations. The trucks that entered, the workers that left, the days inspectors came and went, she tracked them all. She knew more about the neighborhood's construction than even the HOA president did. And when the board members clinked glasses to celebrate, she smiled faintly. What none of them realized was that Evelyn had been preparing for this exact moment since her father's passing years earlier. He had told her, "Never let them take what belongs to you. If they try, make sure they regret every step." So, Evelyn studied property laws, county codes, and land use restrictions late into the night. She filed documents quietly, unnoticed by almost everyone. To the HOA, she looked like a woman living in denial. In truth, she was more prepared than they could imagine. When the HOA's sales office opened, the first families arrived to tour the brand new homes. They were charmed by the model houses, the playground, and the freshly painted clubhouse. The board was already bragging about the most exclusive community in the county. That was when Evelyn made her move. Dressed neatly, With her folder in hand, she walked into the office. The receptionist greeted her politely, not realizing who she was. She simply handed over a stack of documents, the very same ones she had been gathering for years. Inside that folder was proof that every inch of the land beneath those 96 homes still legally belonged to Evelyn Carter. The receptionist froze, uncertain what to do. She rushed the papers to the HOA president. He laughed at first, waving them off, until he saw the official county seals stamped across every page. His smile slowly disappeared. For the first time, the board realized they might not be the owners of the homes they had just built. And Evelyn, she simply turned, walked out of the office, and left them in stunned silence. The mood inside the HOA's shiny new clubhouse shifted almost overnight. Just days earlier, board members had been laughing, sipping coffee and celebrating their so-called victory. Now, they sat in tense silence, staring at the stack of legal documents Evelyn had dropped on their desk like a thunderbolt. At first, they tried to brush it off. "She's bluffing," one of them said. "She's just trying to scare us." But the HOA president wasn't so sure. The county seals were real, the signatures were real, and the fine print was devastating. The documents revealed that Evelyn had filed a restrictive covenant years earlier, locking the land to her family name. No transfer of ownership could take place without her signature, which meant the HOA had built 96 homes on land they didn't truly own. Panic began to ripple through the board. If word spread, families would pull out of their purchase contracts, investors would back away, and the entire project would collapse. Millions of dollars were at stake. Meanwhile, Evelyn remained quiet. She continued her routine as if nothing had changed, tending to her garden, walking to the corner store, and smiling politely at neighbors who stopped to ask what was happening. She gave them no answers, only a calm assurance. The truth always shows itself. Behind closed doors, however, the HOA was scrambling. They called emergency meetings with lawyers who grimaced as they flipped through Evelyn's paperwork. "She's got you locked," one attorney admitted. "The covenant is airtight. You built without proper clearance." The HOA president's face reddened. "Then how do we fix it?" he demanded. "There may not be a quick fix," the lawyer said carefully. "She has leverage. Strong leverage." That word, leverage, echoed in the room like a heavy drumbeat. Days later, a certified letter arrived at the HOA's office. It was from Evelyn. Inside, in neat handwriting, she laid out her position. She wasn't demanding they leave. She wasn't demanding the homes be torn down. Instead, she calmly reminded them that she remained the rightful landowner, which meant every home, every road, every brick was sitting on her property, and she had the right to decide what happened next. The HOA president slammed the letter down on the table. "She thinks she's in control," he muttered. But deep down, he knew the truth. Evelyn Carter had been in control all along. The boardroom was no longer a place of celebration. It had become a war room. Stacks of papers cluttered the long oak table, coffee cups went cold, and tension thickened with every passing hour. The HOA president, Mr. Whitman, refused to believe they had been outsmarted by one quiet woman. "She can't possibly win," he barked. "We've got resources, lawyers, and a reputation to protect. She's just one person." But Evelyn wasn't just one person. She was a woman with time, patience, and a plan built on precision. The HOA's first move was intimidation. They sent Evelyn thick envelopes filled with legal jargon, hoping to overwhelm her. They demanded she release the covenant, calling it obsolete. They even offered her a cash settlement, dangling what they thought was an irresistible payout. Evelyn didn't flinch. Each letter was neatly filed away, unopened by her own hands but delivered directly to her attorney, the same quiet county lawyer who had helped her prepare for this very moment. When reporters caught wind of the situation, Evelyn refused to give interviews. Her silence only deepened the mystery. Meanwhile, cracks spread through the HOA's once proud development. Potential buyers began to hesitate. Rumors traveled fast, whispers that the homes might not legally belong to anyone. "What happens if she takes them back?" one nervous family asked. The HOA's sales team had no answers. Inside her modest living room, Evelyn studied the HOA's tactics. She knew intimidation was their strongest weapon, but it was also their weakest, because the louder they shouted, the more desperate they appeared, and desperation, she understood, was a sign that victory was near. Late one evening, Evelyn stood by her window watching the lights flicker across the new neighborhood. Children were playing on the sidewalks. Couples were unpacking boxes. These families had no idea of the storm brewing beneath their feet. Evelyn didn't blame them. Her fight wasn't with them. It was with the powerful board that had tried to erase her family's legacy. The next morning, she made her boldest move yet. She filed a new petition at the county courthouse, one that made the HOA's lawyers pale as they read it. Evelyn wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking for the homes to be demolished. Instead, she requested something far more clever and far more dangerous to the HOA's pride. She demanded that the HOA itself recognize her as the landowner, with full rights over every property standing on her soil. For the first time, the board realized this wasn't just a legal fight, it was a checkmate in slow motion. When news of Evelyn's petition reached the courthouse bulletin board, the story spread like wildfire. Local newspapers splashed her name across the front page. Woman claims ownership of entire new HOA community. Within days, reporters parked outside her property line, eager for a soundbite. Evelyn never stepped outside to speak. She remained, as steady and quiet as always, letting the headlines grow louder without her. The silence only fueled curiosity. The town was suddenly divided. Some people admired her courage. "She's standing up against those who thought they could walk all over her," a neighbor whispered proudly. Others were skeptical. "She's going to ruin everything for the families moving in," one worried father complained at the grocery store. The HOA board, meanwhile, scrambled to control the narrative. They held press conferences, insisting that Evelyn was mistaken and claiming her documents were outdated. "This is nothing more than a baseless attempt to disrupt progress," Mr. Whitman declared to cameras. But the more he spoke, the more strained his voice sounded, because behind the polished podium, the truth was clear. Their lawyers had no easy solution. Families who had just closed on their homes panicked. They demanded answers. "Do we even own the land under our house?" one mother asked during a heated HOA meeting. The board dodged, promising everything was under review, but worry seeped into the air like a slow leak. Evelyn watched all of this from her porch, sipping tea as the storm raged around her. She knew she couldn't control what people thought, but she had already planted the one truth that mattered. She still owned the land. Her petition wasn't about tearing families from their homes. It was about recognition, respect. Her family's legacy had been dismissed for too long, and the HOA's arrogance had given her the perfect chance to reclaim it. Still, she wasn't reckless. Her lawyer assured her the petition would take time, maybe months, to wind its way through the courts. Evelyn nodded patiently. Time, after all, was on her side. Meanwhile, the HOA's desperation grew. Investors called, angry about delays. Contractors threatened lawsuits for unpaid work. Even within the board itself, cracks began to appear. Some members urged compromise with Evelyn, while others insisted on fighting her until the bitter end. In the middle of that chaos, Evelyn made a quiet appearance at the county courthouse. She signed a single sheet of paper, her expression calm and unshaken. It was a motion that would force the HOA into court, not on their terms, but on hers. And once again, the board realized Evelyn Carter wasn't backing down. She was just getting started. The county courthouse was packed to the brim on the morning of the first hearing. Reporters filled the back rows, families from the new community squeezed together in hushed worry, and townsfolk leaned forward with curiosity. Everyone wanted to witness the showdown. One woman against an entire HOA. Evelyn Carter walked in quietly, her calm presence in sharp contrast to the flustered board members who had gathered with their team of high-priced attorneys. She wore a simple navy dress and carried the same thin folder that had shaken the HOA weeks earlier. To some in the crowd, she looked outmatched. To others, she looked untouchable. When the judge entered, the tension thickened. The case was called, and the HOA's lead attorney leapt to his feet. He spoke with confidence, declaring that Evelyn's claims were outdated and without merit. He argued that the HOA had acted in good faith, that construction had been approved by the county, and that she was simply trying to capitalize on technicalities. But when it was Evelyn's turn, she didn't stand alone. Her lawyer, a quiet man from the county office, rose beside her. His words were steady, deliberate, and devastating. "Your Honor," he began, holding up Evelyn's deed. "The Carter family has owned this land for generations. In 2008, long before this development began, my client placed a restrictive covenant on the property. That covenant explicitly prevents transfer, sale, or development without her written consent. That consent was never given. Therefore, every structure, every road, and every home built upon it remains on land that legally belongs to Ms. Carter." Gasps rippled through the room. The HOA's attorneys shuffled papers, whispering urgently to one another. The judge leaned forward, scanning the document with a sharp eye. The county seal gleamed under the light, undeniable proof of its authenticity. The HOA tried to counter. They claimed Evelyn had been silent for too long, that her lack of protest amounted to consent. But Evelyn's lawyer was ready. He presented her meticulous records, notes she had taken during construction, letters she had sent to the county office years before, and filings that documented her intent to protect her land. The judge's brow furrowed. Silence did not equal surrender. The longer the hearing went on, the more the balance shifted. The HOA's arguments grew weaker, their confidence thinner. Families in the courtroom exchanged uneasy looks. Some glanced at Evelyn, seeing not a quiet woman, but someone who had prepared for this moment with extraordinary patience. And then came Evelyn's most powerful move. Her lawyer read her petition aloud. "My client is not requesting the removal of the homes. She is not seeking to punish the families who live there. She is simply requesting formal recognition as the rightful landowner, with all rights that ownership entails." The words echoed in the courtroom. In that single sentence, Evelyn had turned the fight into something far more dangerous than demolition or payout. She was claiming legal authority over the entire HOA itself. The judge looked up, eyes narrowing. The board members paled. The trap Evelyn had set was now snapping shut. The tension in the county courthouse was unlike anything the town had ever seen. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for the judge's ruling. The HOA board sat rigid, their attorneys whispering last-minute arguments, while families in the back rows clutched one another nervously. At the center of it all sat Evelyn Carter, calm. As ever, her hands folded neatly on her lap. For weeks, she had remained silent while chaos swirled around her. But today, the silence was heavy with anticipation. The judge tapped the papers on his desk, his eyes scanning the room. "I have reviewed the deeds, the covenant, and the filings presented," he began, his voice slow and deliberate. "It is clear that the Carter family's covenant remains valid and binding. The Homeowners Association constructed homes and roads on this property without proper legal authority." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Gasps and murmurs spread instantly. The HOA president's face turned red, his jaw clenched tightly. Evelyn didn't move. The judge continued. "Therefore, the court formally recognizes Ms. Evelyn Carter, as the rightful landowner of the entire property in question, including the subdivision built upon it. Families looked at each other in shock. Did this mean their homes were lost? Would they be forced to leave? The air buzzed with unease. But before panic could take root, the judge added one more line. This ruling does not invalidate the family's occupancy of their homes. However, moving forward, all operations of the HOA, financial, administrative, and managerial, must operate under the authority of Ms. Carter as the landowner. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Some families cheered, with relief that they wouldn't be evicted. Others whispered in awe at Evelyn's stunning victory. Mr. Whitman stood abruptly, shouting, "This is outrageous! She can't run an entire community." But the judge silenced him with a firm strike of the gavel. "You should have sought proper authorization before building. This court will not reward negligence." Evelyn finally rose to her feet. For the first time, she addressed the court directly. Her voice was steady, carrying across the room. "I never wanted to see families suffer. My fight has always been for respect, for my father, my family, and our name. This land has been ours for generations, and no board, no papers, no arrogance will erase that. I welcome these families, but I will never again allow anyone to believe I am powerless." The crowd fell silent, hanging on her every word. It was not the voice of a bitter woman, but of someone who had quietly, patiently outmaneuvered those who underestimated her. In the weeks that followed, the headlines spread far beyond the small town. National news outlets reported on the woman who outsmarted an entire HOA. Legal experts called it one of the most brilliant land rights victories in recent memory. Back in her home, Evelyn sat once more on her porch, sipping tea as she always did. Only now, when she looked across the road, she no longer saw stolen land. She saw her land, her legacy, standing strong with 96 homes built upon it. The HOA had thought they were in control, but in the end, they had walked straight into Evelyn Carter's carefully laid trap. And she had won.